Did you know that only 9% of the population carries the rare and impactful energy of the Initiator? In this video, we're diving deep into what makes this energy type so unique, how it evolves from the baseline Manifestor, and why it's a creative force that sparks transformation in everyone around them. If you've ever felt the power of an internal creative flow and the frustration of it being disrupted, this is for you. Let's explore the true potential of the Initiator and how it shapes the world. If you don't know your human design type, I suggest that you pause the video and find out. You can run your free chart using the link in the description. You will have to know your exact birth date, birth time, and birthplace in order to run an accurate chart. As we explore the parts of the story that make you the main character you're here playing out in this story, the you that is creating your reality, we're going to be exploring it through the lens of the not self, or what you might think of as sometimes the shadow aspect of your character. Your not self, or the shadow aspect, are the things that we mark or note as flaws. We're going to be looking at those things that sometimes don't allow us to maximize the light that we are to come through the shadow elements of the character in our story. I'm going to share with you over the next few slides information about energy type, the emotional themes of that type, how your type creates, the shadow elements of your type, and the highest potential of your type. And as you're listening to the information, I want you to pay attention to where perhaps you may sometimes be living out the shadow element or the shadow aspects of your energy type, of the character that you're here playing. This is not about self-judgment. This is not about beating yourself up. We all live in the shadow elements at times, no matter what. We have cycles when we're under stress, when we're growing, and when things are disruptive. Everyone experiences that shadow side. The exploration here is not about learning to be mad or upset with yourself because you're living out the shadow side, but the exploration here and the intention is to look at if you are chronically living in that shadow place. Are there lessons for you in the shadow place? Is there something in your soul and life curriculum that you really need to explore in order to take back control over this part of your story and support yourself in bringing out more light or bringing through more light? So as you listen to the information about type and the shadow elements, you can write down any of those shadow elements that stand out to you. And remember, the purpose of this is not to beat yourself up. It is for you to begin to explore, to contemplate. If you were going to write a story and follow the arc of a story, like once upon a time, there was a hero or a shiro, and this hero or shiro encountered these shadow elements of themselves. And as they got stuck in old patterns and they limited themselves, they had to go on a journey of some kind, right? An adventure of some kind. So in that adventure, they learned how to find the light, to take the light and shine that light on the shadow aspects of themselves. They had to wrestle oftentimes with themselves or elements of themselves or parts of their story or old aspects of the story that they've outgrown. They have to go to the mat and through adventure, explore how to bring light to the shadow parts. You can't write or rewrite that story if you don't have awareness first. You have to know where you are in your story in order for you to take back control of that story. So we're going to start with exploring the not self so that you can begin to look at where you are now potentially and what are some things that you're going to do in your story to begin to work with these parts to choose to bring out the higher aspect of the story or of this main character that you're playing in your story. So as you're listening, again, you can write down the shadow elements, but also write down the highest potential as well. Even if you're not living it yet, it's okay, because we're going to, through awareness and doing the light work, you're going to take back control over your story. When we look at the storytelling layers in the chart, we see that the first layer in the chart is your main character. And that main character is represented by your human design type and also by the lines in your profile, which is going to tell you a little bit more about the purpose of your character, what it is here to fulfill, and the things your character needs in order to feel grounded and stable and settled. But we're going to dive into each of the profiles in other videos, so be sure you're subscribed to the channel to not miss those. So here you see the 5 quantum human design types. Your type tells us a lot about your unique way of interacting with the quantum field, how your creative muse, if you will, how divine source communicates with you and through you. Your type tells you a lot about the ultimate purpose of the main character you're here playing in your story. The 5 types in quantum human design are the initiator, known as the manifestor in traditional human design, the orchestrator or the projector in traditional human design, the alchemist or the generator in traditional human design, the time bender or the manifesting generator in traditional human design, and the calibrator or the reflector in traditional human design. Today, we'll be focusing solely on the initiator types, or the manifestors in traditional human design. Your type is your unique way of interacting with the quantum field, or another way of saying this is how your muse or your creative source communicates with you and through you. Each of the energy types has a purpose, an emotional theme, and a potential challenge. Each of the 5 types in human design also have a unique role, a unique way of making decisions, and a unique way of using energy and sustaining energy in their lives. When people first encounter human design, they can really relate to the story of their traditional human design type. Oftentimes, it starts to help them make sense of how they have felt inside themselves, why they've met with some of the struggles and the obstacles that they've experienced. It illuminates where perhaps they have not lived aligned with their natural energy blueprint, aligned with their natural energy type. And when they have been living out of alignment with their energy type, they experience pain or burnout or confusion or struggle or feeling like they're not fulfilling their potential. Each of the emotional themes are different for each type. When our emotional theme gets activated, we can get stuck, feel stuck. We feel angry. We don't quite know how to break through to fulfill that potential that we can feel inside of ourselves. And each type has a specific strategy. And the purpose of that strategy is to help you get back into your body, to help you remember what it feels like to trust the decision-making process. The strategy for each type is about taking you out of the painful, not self-conditioned expression of your energy type and bringing you back to baseline. This is a process that often takes time because you have to remember how your body feels in response to what feels good and right and true for you. We have to remember how to trust our gut, trust our heart, to bypass the voice or the voices in our head and bring ourselves back to a natural truth that is aligned not just with mind, but with body and spirit as well. So as we go through our exploration of the initiator, the manifestor type today, I want you to pay attention to the purpose of your type, the emotional theme, and those places where you may be challenged to fulfill the purpose of your type. But I also want you to think about the times in your life when you have made decisions that were good, that were right, that were aligned. Connect in your body and really feel what your body's response to truth and alignment feels like. If you practice following your strategy for your type, you will eventually, over time, bring yourself back to baseline. As you sit at that baseline place, you will learn to know the difference between truth, and that's truth with a capital T, what's true for you and what's not. Now, this length of time varies from person to person. It can depend on how much inner work you've done, can depend on your own lived experiences, and depending on where you are in your own journey of personal growth and evolution. What is your truth? What is your path? What are your decisions to make? What is right? What feels right for you and to you? And when you remember and you live from that place of being deeply aligned with your baseline character's identity, that true story of the character you came here to play, then you will move from average and baseline into the journey of exploring what else is possible. You'll start to ask, how can I now take the story of who this character is and grow it, evolve it, push it past that average baseline expression, and evolve it into an even higher expression of purpose and a higher expression of the story? And so today we're specifically talking about this energy type, which is called the initiator in quantum human design. The quantum human design names are the names that we give the expanded expression, the evolved expression of each energy type. So manifestor is the baseline name of this energy type. So if you look at the slide, you'll see the spectrum of the manifestor to initiator story. On the left-hand side, you've got the conditioned expression, which I'll talk about in a minute. In the midpoint, you have the baseline, the manifestor. And once you get back in touch with that baseline expression, then you have all this room for growth. The manifestor eventually evolves into the full expression, and that full expression of the manifestor story, they become or they evolve into the initiator. The manifestors are a very unique energy type. They represent approximately 9% of the population, and they have a role in life of following their internal creative impulses. And through following those internal creative impulses, they basically create a wave of impact that gives other people around them opportunities, such as things to do or things to respond to. The manifestor's movement through the world opens up doorways for others. It isn't necessarily opening up a doorway where the initiator is telling people, now you go do this and you go do that. It's simply just like a wave of energy. When the initiator moves, it creates a ripple effect. And whatever it is that the initiator is creating or doing, that ripple effect in turn creates opportunities for others. The manifestor has an internal nonverbal creative flow, meaning of all of the 5 energy types, the manifestor has a deep and natural connection to inner wisdom, to source, to creativity, and to creative inspiration. And it's their job of their character ultimately to learn to understand those creative sparks, those creative impulses, and to follow those creative impulses when the inner timing and the outer timing are aligned. The challenge for the initiator is because of their internal nonverbal creative flow. When the initiator or the manifestor gets ready to initiate, to move, to follow that creative pulse, they oftentimes have to deal with the people around them. And because their energy is so impactful unconsciously, when we stand in the energy field of that manifestor, we know to pay attention. We know that the manifestor is going to create some kind of ripple effect. And we are literally in almost a state of heightened awareness when we are in the presence of this manifestor initiator energy. When the manifestor moves, when they start to follow that creative impulse, we all notice that creative impulse when it's time, when that inner alignment and that outer alignment happens and it's time for them to take action, they start to move and that action can really seem super fast, even though the initiator may have spent weeks, months even, contemplating things, thinking about them, waiting for the right timing. When they actually spring into action, it can happen pretty quickly or seem to happen pretty quickly to everyone on the outside. It's an internal nonverbal creative flow, and that's a really important piece to pay attention to. What that means for the manifestor is that when the timing is right, they simply spring into action. And because we all know we're in the energy field of a manifestor, we all notice when that manifestor springs into action. And for many people, that first impulse when a manifestor springs into action is to ask them, hey, what are you doing? Where are you going? Do you need some help? And the minute we start to ask them those questions or try to get clarity from them about what they're doing and why, or we in any way are stopping the creative flow, they react to us oftentimes with anger. Or if they've learned to push that anger down, they react by having to stop and find the words, which is a very difficult thing for them to do, to explain, no, I don't need any help. Here's what I'm going to do. They have to stop that connection to that internal nonverbal creative flow, use their language, and oftentimes what happens is they never are able to catch that flow again. The manifestor journey, when they are living in that conditioned shadow expression, can feel like this perpetual or chronic creative disruption. That creative disruption has many sources. When manifestors are children, these are often the children that will just take off and go do their own thing. They'll take off into the parking lot, into the park, into the forest, or will go follow their creative impulses. And as parents, oftentimes our first impulse when we give birth to a manifestor child is to try to stop them, to hold them back and to control them. Not because we want to shut them down necessarily, but because we want to keep them safe, because they're usually the kid that's off doing their own thing. And as we worry as parents, we oftentimes feel like we have to double down on managing our manifestor children. What also happens is that manifestors either learn to shut down their creative impulses or they learn to get secretive. That state of being in a chronically disrupted state, that when your creativity is chronically being disrupted by the environment around you, by other people trying to help you or support you or squash your creative flow, that can cause you to experience the emotional theme of anger. And anger is also not an acceptable emotional state, particularly, by the way, if you're a woman or if you grew up conditioned as a woman in our culture. We oftentimes really struggle with the idea of an angry woman. If you were chronically creatively disrupted and you experienced anger in response to that disruption, and then you learn that anger is also not an okay or safe emotion to express, you really may have gone underground with your natural creative power as an initiator. That going underground with your natural creative flow can cause you to lose trust in your own inner guidance system, in your own inner wisdom. The manifestor, in healing the process of relearning how they can connect with that internal nonverbal creative flow, and to be the creative spark that they are, has to really get back in touch with that inner feeling, that inner sense of rightness. Meaning, the manifestor has to remember what it feels like when something feels right and aligned. What does it feel like to me in my body when the timing is right? What does it feel like to me when my energy is ready to enter that creative flow? Reconnecting with that feeling on a visceral, physical level is part of the process for the manifestor that gets them reconnected with their natural creativity and their purpose. It also helps them reestablish a deep sense of self-trust. The other challenge that the manifestor has, and there are two other types that also have this challenge. This is the same challenge for the projectors or the orchestrators and the reflectors or the calibrators. They do not have sustainable access to workforce and life force energy. What that means is the manifestor, the initiator, isn't necessarily here to work in the traditional way that we think of as working. They're here to follow the boom and bust cycles of their energies, to be in the flow of their creative self-expression, but not necessarily be able to sustain that in a job. Oftentimes, because our culture so deeply ties value to work and money, the manifestor doesn't even know what else to do if they can't follow their own internal creative flow. And so they work in the way that we've all been trained to work. And while that might pay the bills for a while, the energetic toll can be devastating. And we'll oftentimes see, particularly as an initiator or a manifestor gets more towards 45 or 50, they'll experience a deep burnout. And that burnout can come from lacking in self-trust and not knowing how to find your own inner compass and making decisions that feel good and right and correct for you. It can come from being in a state of chronic creative disruption and having to suppress anger. That experience of anger, when the initiator or the manifestor learns to turn off all of those natural parts of themselves, then that can also put themselves at risk for being burned out. Remember that every energy type has a strategy, a decision-making process, a way of reconnecting with that internal sense of what is the right choice for them. And the strategy for the manifestor, the initiator, is a little bit unnatural to a certain degree. The strategy for the initiator is to inform and then act. But what that means is that an initiator has to first learn to connect with that inner sense of when the timing is right for them to follow that creative flow. There's a pause in that process, though. And that pause means that before a manifestor or initiator can follow that creative flow, they have to stop. They have to look around them and see which people, if any, are in their impact field, what people are going to be directly affected by the action that they're about to take. And then once they recognize who is directly in their impact field, it's their job to inform those people to let them know, hey, I'm going to go be doing this thing right now. And the purpose of informing is not to get anyone's permission. You don't need permission if you're a manifestor, an initiator, but it's to give people the information that they need to be prepared for that wave of impact. The impact that is the manifestor moving through the room. When an initiator, a manifestor, is in the right environment with the right people, those people who have been informed will know to stand back, to not interrupt their creative flow, and to allow them to complete the creative process without having to tap into language or words. And this process of learning to inform, as I said, can feel somewhat unnatural for the manifestor in the beginning. And the full expression of the manifestor energy, when the manifestor evolves from being the manifestor into fulfilling the higher potential, the initiator, they naturally place themselves in an environment where they can follow that creative flow without having to necessarily inform. where the people around them know them so well and are operating in such vibrational alignment that they no longer have to do that informing piece. They can just purely follow that internal nonverbal creative flow. But until the experience actually happens, in the beginning, the manifestor has to learn to take stock of who's around them and inform them before they act. Even though this can seem tedious or even difficult, it actually saves them a tremendous amount of time. Think about it this way. If you're a manifestor and you take off to the store because you've noticed that you're missing an ingredient for something that you're cooking, and your partner comes into the kitchen and sees that you're gone, and let's say you moved so fast that you forgot to take your phone with you, and now they're calling your phone, and your phone is ringing, but it's in the kitchen, and they don't know where you are, where you went, what's going on, or when you're coming back. By the time you return home from the store, your partner is going to feel angry with you because they're not going to understand what just happened. And of course, anger is the emotional theme for the manifestor type. But when we talk about emotional themes, it goes both ways. We're talking about a theme of energy that comes either from within you or from those around you. So as a manifestor, you're either feeling angry, particularly if someone stops your creative flow, or they interrupt you and make you have to find language to explain what you're doing, or people are angry with you because you've gone ahead and done something without informing anyone. So of course, if you come home to an angry partner from the store, now you're going to spend your time trying to make up, trying to explain what you were doing and why, trying to shift and change the energy and bring it back to a good place so that you can sit down and have a nice dinner together. So that emotional theme of anger is really a symptom of a creative flow disruption. That anger happens internally when your internal nonverbal creative flow gets disrupted. That eruption of that creative energy, that pure connection to the muse, to the quantum field, to the quantum pulse, to the creative inspiration, that is the life force of the manifestor. And when that gets disrupted, that creative spark has to go somewhere. We say you experience anger when you're disrupted or interrupted, but really it's not technically anger. It's literally that creative force exploding. That energy has to go somewhere. It's like lava coming out of a mountain, a volcano. And of course, as we just talked about, that anger can also come at you when people are confused about what you're doing. So if anger is a significant theme in your life, especially if you've learned that anger or being angry is not safe, or if people are angry with you and it's not safe, or it's not safe for you to express your anger, and you repress all of those feelings, that can sometimes convert into burnout and even in low-grade depression. If you live in a circumstance or you're in a relationship where there's chronic anger, and anger is a chronic theme in your life, it often means that your internal and external environment are not supportive of your creative flow. Certainly when you're an initiator, if you've got a consistent chronic theme of anger happening in your life, it's an important signal to stop and pay attention to see what's happening with your creative drive. When the manifestor reaches baseline and they are living true to their initiator power, when they are following that internal nonverbal creative flow, when they're taking stock of who's going to be impacted by their actions, they're informing and then they're acting. When they live that way long enough and they recover and heal their connection to their creativity and their power, then they lay the course to begin to evolve their manifestor story. The manifestor, in its evolved expression as the initiator, has a quantum purpose of initiating people into the frequency of transformation and creativity through direct access to the quantum pulse. What that means is moving beyond this creative force that is the manifestor as you continue to fully embody your connection to that creative force that is you, that is so much a natural part of who you are as this character that you are here playing. As you begin to live true to yourself, just by simply living true to who you are, by following your natural creative flow, you initiate people energetically. As you begin to live true to yourself, to this character, just by simply being you, by following your natural creative flow, you initiate people energetically. Your movement in life, aligned with your authentic identity as this character, creates a wave of energy that supports others around you in living true to their authentic identity and the character that they're here playing. They don't have to live like you and they don't have to follow you. Your energy, by simply just being the creative force that you are, inspires others to be the creative force that they are. So the manifestor in its evolved expression becomes an initiator by being the full expression of yourself, of the character. You initiate others into alignment with their authentic self as the character they're here playing. The challenge for the initiator is to learn to reclaim their power, to get reconnected back to that internal, nonverbal creative flow, and to learn how to work with that energy and to overcome the feeling of being alone. As an initiator, you don't need others. That doesn't mean you don't want to be in relationship with others, but you need to be in relationship where you have the freedom to follow your own inner timing around your creative flow. You need to have that understanding from your partner. You also don't need other people in order to get things done. And that's not personal. It's just part of the nature of how you're configured, how you're wired. Other people need people differently. Everybody has different energetic needs. But that ability that you have to be able to create on your own can sometimes cause you to feel alone and even lonely. So as you begin to think about the ways in which you can reframe and rewrite your narrative, ways in which you can move yourself out of your conditioned expression to the baseline expression of being the manifestor, and then to the quantum expression, that fulfilled expression of the potential as the initiator. Here are some contemplations and explorations for you to think about. You can contemplate whether you are expressing your full power or are you hiding it. If you're hiding your full power, then what magical and mysterious and powerful thing do you need to do to reawaken your connection to your full power and that internal nonverbal creative flow? You can also contemplate what role that anger has played out in keeping you from fulfilling your power. What needs to happen for you to transform your experience in your environment so that you have the freedom to move in your creative flow without interruption, without the anger, and with the full support of your internal and external environment. Again, looking at the story arc of the initiator energy type, in the conditioned expression of the manifestor, we have the potential for burnout, anger, creative disruption, disempowerment, and lacking in self-trust. And when you begin the healing process of following your strategy and learning to reconnect with the feeling of what it feels like to have an inner and outer alignment with your own timing, you learn to take stock of who's going to be impacted by your actions. You inform and then you act. And once you do that consistently over time, you begin to reconnect with your power and build an environment for yourself that supports you in fulfilling that creative expression. And then you begin to live in that baseline frequency. That baseline expression of your manifestor energy over time, as it becomes more natural and normal for you, you then begin to create an environment that is naturally supportive internally and externally. You begin to move into that fulfillment of that manifestor energy, and then you begin to evolve into the expression as the initiator, the person who simply by being the true character you are playing, you just wake others up to the power of their own authentic alignment as well. Remember that you get to choose how you play with the archetype of your energy type. And there's nothing wrong and there's no problem with living in the conditioned expression. You're going to hit the conditioned expression off and on all the time. It's going to get inflamed in you. And anytime that you have a cycle of growth, anytime you experience a cycle of disruption, anytime you get challenged to stretch into your growth potential, it's very normal for those shadow expressions or the not self-conditioned expressions to get activated and to get inflamed and to get triggered. The key is to not beat yourself up and not judge yourself and be harsh on yourself and say, oh, this aspect of my character's personality is this not self phase of myself is being inflamed right now and I'm the worst. No, simply have the awareness that, oh, I'm in a cycle of growth. What story do I need to rewrite? What new narrative do I need to create in the context of whatever's going on in my life that takes me out of that conditioned expression into baseline? And then from that baseline, ultimately into the highest potential, the quantum potential. We will be going through the other 4 energy types, so be sure you're subscribed to the channel to catch those. And if you want to dive deeper and learn more about quantum human design, you don't have to do your online learning alone. I have a special offer solely supporting new and current students in the School of Quantum Human Design who use my referral links when enrolling in courses. You're supporting me by using my referral link, and in turn, I will support you with additional one-on-one guidance, tutoring, mentoring, coaching, or consulting. To learn more and download my free guide, just click on the Consult with Cass link in the description of this video. If you found value in this video, please give it a thumbs up, share with a friend, subscribe if you're not already, or leave a comment and share what resonated with you the most. If you don't know what to say, you can share the eye emoji. Sending only love. See you in the next video.